We got an article from Ted Galen Carpenter at Quincy Institute to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, basically, I mean, since 1979, we have the Taiwan Relations Act, and this is when Jimmy Carter, after Nixon and Kissinger sort of paved the way, Nixon goes to China. We sort of formalized relations or established relations with the People's Republic of China, and then we had basically we no longer had the our commitment to our security guarantee to Taiwan, to the Republic, what's called the Republic of China, and we had what you would call unofficial relations. So that we have a de facto embassy over there called. This is the American Institute in Taiwan, and Taiwan has the Taiwan Economic Cultural Representative Office in the United States. And so, basically, they the name change comes to basically they want to call it the Taiwanese would like us to call it the Thai, and some of the Hawks here, some of the China Hawks would like us to call this the Taiwan, basically the Taiwan Representative Office. And what's interesting is as I said earlier, the Lithuanians have already done this, and I mean, so basically, like as Ted Young Carpenter points out in this piece, the issue here with sort of the nuance in the different names, it gets to kind of absurd levels where, like, as he points out, when Taiwanese athletes are in the compete in the Olympics, their banner is called Chinese Taipei and things like that. And it's difficult for them they don't have formal membership in the World Health Organization because, the U.S. one China policy. So it makes it difficult for them to cooperate in combating the COVID outbreak, as he points out. But and as he points out, that the Taiwanese leaders in particular are very disenchanted with this. So, but we have seen a test case of what, because the Americans are thinking of doing this, and there's a lot of encouragement for them to do so, as I said. But we have seen a test case of this, and basically what happened was the Lithuanians, so the Taiwanese established what was called the Taiwan Representative Office in Vilnius in this July, and shortly after that, Taipei's foreign minister Joseph Wu said it was very significant. Said Lithuania is a good partner for Taiwan who shares the same values for freedom and democracy. He said both countries were on the strategic front line of defending democratic systems. This is what a lot of Taiwan's rhetoric is these days about how vital they are as a beacon of democracy and that sort of thing. And so Beijing came out and protested this. They recalled their ambassador. They said it was a violation of the One China principle. And then Lithuanian leaders, were very upset as well. So then that was in August. So then in early September, the Lithuanians pulled their ambassador out of Beijing. And then, as I said earlier, you had Ned Price coming out going, "We stand with our ally Lithuania and condemn the People's Republic of China's recent retaliatory actions." And Jake Sullivan came out and reiterated that vow of support. Ned Price added that the U.S. supports our European partners as they develop ties with Taiwan. And basically he talks about how with everything going on, it would kind of be if Biden did this with all the other things we've covered already, especially after that phone call, that, it could have been the start of a relative thaw in these relations now we have with China. But even something like this, like let's say if Biden did, I think the point that Ted Galen Carpenter makes here essentially is that if they didn't go through with this request from Taiwan, it would at least send a message to the Chinese that we're not exactly sticking with, basically extending the Trump policy of just being anti-China through and through. It would show some nuance. It would show that we're not just trying to provoke them in following Lithuania's lead on this, as we're being encouraged to do by a lot of these China hawks. So, and I think, of course, just anything that we could do that would actually, further limit thwart diplomatic relations between ourselves and Beijing would just not be a good idea. And it's essentially guaranteed. if we do this. So yeah, it doesn't seem like a big deal, and it does seem kind of obnoxious, but at the same time, as Daniel Davis pointed out in that quote, I mean, the way I look at it is it's not really any of my business. I'm more concerned with American culpability in a situation like what we have in Palestine than I am with what could potentially come of Taiwan. At least at this point, I'm not really, I'm as an American, my taxes go to funding Israeli apartheid. I mean, as far as Taiwan goes, I certainly don't want to see anybody get, killed. I don't want to see the country get attacked. I don't want to see any new war. But I'm much more concerned about the Americans getting involved in such a war or provoking such a war. And this, seems relatively insignificant, but it's also part and parcel of the strategy of stoking tensions, using Taiwan as a wedge issue. And this is the sort of thing. That even neocons like Paul Wolfowitz have been talking about for a long time about just essentially, going back to the old days of the old Cold, like back in the original Cold War, where we outright said, we don't recognize Beijing and we will defend Taiwan, absolutely if it comes to an attack and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, it doesn't seem like much, but at the same time, it doesn't help, and it can only really make things worse.
Right. We had this situation with China where, for several years now, we've been increasingly provocative and aggressive in our actions. And while changing the name of the Taiwanese diplomatic building in the United States is not going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back of the U.S. one China policy, it is adding another piece of straw to that. And this is, something, as you point out, where Joe Biden had maybe suggested that there was a window of opportunity to start, unloading some of the load from the camel, but rather, the U.S. is now concerned about making sure the camel knows that no, we're gonna be throwing some more on you. Connor, we're coming up on hour here, so we should wrap up. Any final thoughts, or tell people where they can find your work?
Yeah, well, no, I'll just say that also at the same time that Taiwan is spending a lot more, they're spending billions of dollars more on weapons. They're running drills right now simulating Chinese invasions of Taiwan. Seen reports of how they're landing, fighter jets and warplanes on highways that they convert into runways in case of an attack, because a lot of their air bases are on their western coast facing China. So they'll probably get hit immediately if there's an attack. Anyway, I think that the more I've read about this, you find that the more the Americans are in the region provoking things, sailing warships to the Taiwan Strait, as you covered recently, we just sent a Coast Guard cutter through the Taiwan Strait. I mean, we're getting to beyond absurdity at this point in the U.S.-China policy. And the more that we use this wedge issue to further sharpen the tensions in the region and build these anti-China Cold War style blocks in the region, like we discussed today, it makes an attack on Taiwan much more likely. And this deal with Australia encourages China to try and do something to basically to counter this, so to double down on their policies and to maybe try and build more nuclear, like you said, focus on anti-submarine operations even more, spend more money on their navy. And so yeah, it's just I mean, we're just not headed in a good direction with all this stuff, but we still have an opportunity, obviously, to get out ahead of it and stop it in its tracks.